It's Tatiana on Alt Nation. Hi, we're here in our LA studios with Dan Smith from Bastille. He's here for an exclusive session. Dan, hi. Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Dan, we go way back with you. I was doing just a little research, and I hopped into our Sirius XM app. I found a video on there from 2013 of the band in our New York studios doing a stripped-down version of Pompeii.
Yeah.
2013. I was like, there's no way this is actually from 10 years ago.
That is nuts.
And we've got videos and content from you guys on there from 2013, 2019, 2022. So old pals of the Sirius XM Bastille is.
Sirius XM have been wonderfully, brilliantly supportive of our band, so thank you very much.
Oh, we're happy to do it. Does that, 2013 feel just like a lifetime ago?
It both does and it doesn't. It's really weird. I think our first album just took us all over the world, and we never really stopped until basically last year. So I don't know, I think stopping allows you to kind of process everything a little bit. It's all a bit of a blur, to use a bunch of cliches.
But then even last year, you guys did the anniversary shows.
Exactly, yeah, I know. So, we should probably take more of a break. And this is
you guys did like a skip. You didn't do a stop. You just did a mosey, if you will.
Yes, yeah. Well, this year is our kind of Bastille's year away from touring, and it's kind of like a bit of a gap year. And then look, I'm back. I just can't stay away. This album was kind of a sort of side quest of mine. But it's led me right back here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't wanna harp too much on the past, but inherently this album is based so much on the past. It's called Ampersand. It's out now, and it's an album you wrote about figures in history, authors, artists, musicians, in some cases, religious figures that we're really familiar with. How does an idea like this take shape? Because it is quite different from not only what we get from Bastille, but artists in general. I mean, maybe we get a song or two on an album that's focused around, something else, but a whole, from cover to cover, it's other
good question.
figures.
I mean, I've always kind of used other stories a bit to try and write songs. There's on our first album, there's Pompeii, and there's Laura Palmer, and Icarus and stuff. But I guess this album, it started with a song called Leonard and Marianne, about Leonard Cohen and Marianne Ilchen, who's one of his partners and muses. And then there was a song called Bonnie and Clyde as well. And I guess I saw them written down, and I saw the "and" in the middle, and I guess thought it might be fun to kind of formalize the idea of story songs. And there's loads of music by artists, from years and years ago, I don't know, Elton John, Simon and Garfunkel, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, through to kind of Regina Spektor, Laura Marling, Anoni, Sufjan Stevens, loads of artists that I love that make, kind of with a unique voice that are telling stories really well in songs. And I just wanted to lean into that a bit, make something really different. And I guess formalize this sort of idea of the ampersand being at the center of every song title. And all the song titles are so annoyingly long and pretentious, which I'm very aware of. But I want, basically, that was a lovely introduction to the album. Thank you. You put it way better than I ever can. But I think they're story songs, and they are about people, or they're imagining a moment in those people's shoes, or me asking them questions through the songs. But it's not a history lesson. So the titles are there. That if you're interested in the song, and if you want to search it online, it takes you down the same rabbit hole, hopefully, that I went down. And it's about some very familiar people, like Emily Dickinson, Oscar Wilde, Eve from the Bible. And then there's, much less known figures as well. I met a new friend who's a kind of academic and runs a sort of comedy history show in the UK. And I asked her to help me find people that I maybe hadn't heard of, that most people hadn't heard of. And she did an amazing job and directed me towards Chung Yi Sao, who's this sort of Chinese pirate queen from the 1700s, who was super powerful, but we don't remember her. And those of us who do know her by her husband's name, which obviously is insanely fucked. And Julie Daubigny, who was this opera singing, sword fighting, sort of mega celebrity of France hundreds of years ago, who broke one of her girlfriends out of a nunnery by burning it down. Through to a whole load of different people. And there are stories. There's a song there that is based on a poem that my dad wrote years ago about a woman that he saw in San Francisco. So it's a real mix of kind of famous stories, less known stories. But I guess looking to sort of to kind of find the thing that I find really resonant, or that the questions that I want to ask of them. Yeah, and it's weirdly turned out to be quite a personal album as well, even
Yeah.
though it's about other people. But yeah, I think for me it's quite a nice. I talk about it, the first song on the album is called Intros and Narrators, and I kind of talk about this idea that, you know, you can never really trust a narrator, whoever that may be, if it's your friend telling a story or if it's something you're reading in a
Right.
book or like seeing on the news. Like, we're all narrators and storytellers in whatever different way, but we all come with our own like biases and preconceptions
Yeah.
and, you know, all that stuff. So I guess I kind of wanted to start the album by completely undermining the idea of storytelling.
Just like, I'm going to tell this story, but just so you know.
Yeah, just so
Someone
you
else
know.
could tell the same story, but in a completely different interpretation.
Exactly.
Of it all.
And I think in dealing with real people's lives, I wanted to be thoughtful and respectful and interested and, you know, and try and be as kind of like researched as I could be. But it's also like, this makes it sound really heavy and fusty. It's actually, you know, a lot of this, I'd like watch a film and write a song, or like listen to a podcast or read a book. And I'm not in any way an authority on these people. I'm kind of just an interested idiot. But yeah, like the album, it sounds really different to I think what people would expect from Bastille. And it was, I wrote it mostly at home at my kitchen table.
Just different from the album's past, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's kind of how I started pre-Bastille. Like, you know, I wrote that whole first album in my bedroom on a laptop and you know, and then produced it with my friend. But so it's kind of a bit of a return to that, and I loved the freedom of it. And, you know, there was no real like thought or intention with where this album would go. It was just a thing. I was me kind of going back to remembering that writing songs for me and the process of putting headphones on and sitting at my tiny little keyboard and my laptop with a microphone and recording, layering myself up and doing all of that is kind of, for me, just a really nice way to sort of both switch off and engage. It's like, I guess, my version of playing video games or you know, whatever people might do to relax. But also, you know, touring is a lot of the same thing over and over again. Whilst it's amazing, I also think that my brain has rotted over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So this was a really nice excuse to like force me to try and learn guitar, force me to, you know, engage with Emma, the historian I mentioned, who, you know, the whole world of academia and that stuff that like isn't, you know, is sort of, I haven't been part of that for years, and loads of different artists and illustrators and printmakers, and as well as all the amazing musicians and friends who sort of helped out and played on this album. So it's been like a nice, like I said, like kind of nice side quest.
What you mentioned that, you know, kind of sitting down and writing was a way for you to like disengage but also engage, just like in a bit of a different way. Do you think like choosing to write about other people's stories through your own lens is also a way of that? I mean, because you did mention that the album, you know, it does have personal touches, of course. How could it not? But when, you know, you are taking history and interpreting it is that a way for you to also kind of like switch off a bit for the time being?
I think so. I think it's yeah. This is a very bad answer, but I think it's a bit of both. Like you said, you know, it's forcing you to look at what life would have been like for different people at different times and in different situations, and the challenges they would have faced that are specific to them, but also the things that are totally universal and still really applicable. You know, I'm not. It's not about me trying to see myself in these people, but you know, when I'm writing about Emily Dickinson and the idea that there's this sort of this version of her that exists in the public consciousness, that she was this recluse and you know, and led this antisocial life. Well, you know, examining that and the fact that actually she, you know, she had loads of friends. She had a relationship. She was in a you know, relationship her entire life that was kind of erased from the perception of her. But also, like, even if she was this kind of lonely, isolated artist, if she was fulfilled and like satisfied by her life, then that's fine in and of itself.
Yeah.
But I guess, like, you know, whatever version you choose to believe, if it's the one where that I think was true, where she like had a relationship and had all these correspondences and all these different friendships, and that versus, you know, lonely recluse who just like loses herself in art, like, you know, who are we to judge either way? And I guess I can sort of relate to both a little bit. And yeah, I guess, you know, the song about Eve and Paradise Lost, you know, the idea of like, if you took that story and made it literal, and like, how messed up to be in a relationship with someone that you that you love, but who like you were literally made from and for. Like, that's such a messed up dynamic. And then, you know, touching on kind of like disbelieved women's pain in medicine and like medical misogyny and all that kind of stuff. You know, just really lighthearted, fun topics.
Yeah, these are definitely things to talk about over like the dinner table.
Yes,
for
you're
sure.
like,
With
you're
your
like, can
family
we just
at
keep
the
it light?
reunion.
Keep it light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but that was something when I was listening to the album, I think kind of going into it, I had a perception of, you know, there is going to maybe be like, you know, obviously a heavy historical aspect, but I was surprised by the amount of like current relatability as well.
Yeah,
you know,
I wasn't interested in. It's not a history lesson at all. Like, it's really not, and it's not meant to like hit you around the head. Despite what I just went off on talking about before, it's not meant to hit you around the head. Like, I wanted these to be really beautiful songs that are relatable, no matter who you are and what your experience is.
Yeah.
And not that I set out to do that, but, you know, it was about trying to find the thing, like, what's the thing that resonates to me?
Mm-hmm.
And therefore I assume to, like, most people, like, in the lives of these people, what is it that really fascinated me about them? And I was like, oh, God, I hadn't thought about that, you know.
Is there one person or persons you spoke or you wrote about and sang about that you identify with more than the others?
That's a really good question. I don't know about that. Yeah, I mean...
Or like one that resonated most?
I mean, I guess there's like Telegraph Road, which we play in the session, which
Yes.
is, you know, based on a poem that... So my dad is not a poet, but my mum and dad are from South Africa. And just before they moved to the UK and then settled down and had me and my sister, they travelled across America for a year. And when I was 14 and trying to write songs, my dad was like, he could see that I was struggling lyrically, as in I was 14 and had nothing to say. And he was like, hey man, here's this book of like notes and poems that I made, you know, years ago when me and your mum were travelling across America. And I was like, oh, okay, that's weird. We don't give each other poetry in my house. But it was sweet of him to give me that. And I saw this thing, wrote it when I was 14. So my first ever song really was called Telegraph Road. And it's based on this poem by my dad. And my mum sung backing vocals. And then cut to however many years later, we're making this album. And I was thinking about stories. And, you know, it's about this woman in San Francisco and about like the kind of unhoused population. And I thought I should bring it back. So I kind of rewrote it a bit. Charlie plays this beautiful piano part. And I got my mum to come back and do backing vocals again.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah, I know. It's so weird that it's like a real family affair, that very unintended. But so that song, you know, I guess I wrote a new verse at the end that's kind of me now. So it's both the story of this woman who I never met, but who kind of has figured in my mind for a while. But it's also the story of this song that kind of evolved from like my dad and my mum post-university, like traveling in you know, in their like 20s, through to me as a 14-year-old writing my first song, through to me now, you know, being in a band.
Generational moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's also very sad, small, intimate little piano song.
You're like, for the record, it's still sad.
Yeah. There's a song on there called Drawbridge and the Baroness, which I think is my favourite track on the album, and it's kind of mad. It's really fun to play live. I have to sing incredibly high. So every night I'm like, am I going to get it? Am I going to get it? Go for it.
You can do it.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we want to get to this session. I'm so happy you mentioned Telegraph Road because that is the song we're going to hear first. But I do want to point out that I was reading up, and I know you have thanked coffee for this album existing. One of my favorite things on this planet. And you're also a big reader, obviously. There's no way you couldn't. When you're going to the coffee shop, what book is in your hand and what is your coffee order?
Oh my God. My coffee order will be like it's just a black coffee. Yeah. I'll have an Americano, or if they've got like a nice drip, I'll have that. Or, you know, if I really need a caffeine punch around the face, I will get a cold brew, because that's always like pretty high caffeine content. And tastes delicious too. And the book that's in my hand, that's a really good question. I've always got about 5 books on the go because I can't.
It's so hard. I've got like 3 that I'm reading right now. It's like it's constantly cycling through, trying to finish all 3.
Yeah, I have like a couple of fiction and a non-fiction, and then I'm generally listening to about 2 or 3 at the same time as well. Because
oh my gosh,
I know it's a real mess. Imagine the absolute state in my head.
But you know what? I can't say anything about that because I have typically an audiobook in rotation for commute because LA, yay. Yeah. I've usually got something on my e-reader, and then I've got a physical book for when I can't like whip my phone out and start reading on my Kindle. So
it's nice to have lots going on.
Brain never silent.
No,
never.
And
not 1 minute a piece
no.
up in there.
Yeah, absolute nightmare.
I also want to point out, too, that you were speaking about your friend, Emma, who you do a podcast with about all these songs, which was such a fantastic listen. So if anybody is looking to dive deeper into each individual track, it is called Muses. And can you pronounce her last name for me?
She's called Emma Nagoose.
Emma Nagoose and Dan Smith, the Muses podcast.
Also, can I just point out, despite my boring rambles on this, it's really funny because she is really funny. Like,
I listened to a few of the episodes and it was like such a blast.
Thanks for listening. Yeah. I think it's like, it was just a fun excuse to talk about like who these people are, if you know them or don't, why history remembers them wrongly, rightly, whatever. And she just is, she's very well informed, but she's like she's not remotely high and mighty with her knowledge. She's super inclusive and she just absolutely mercilessly takes the piss out of me, which I love. which is great. And I get, basically I'm there as the person that like kind of wants to know more and is ashamed of how little I know. And she, you know, she, both her and the researchers and a bunch of other people like talk about these people in an informed way. And it's really fun. It's really funny.
It's so digestible. It's like you don't feel like it's learning, but you don't feel like you're learning. It's not like when you're back in school and you're like, oh,
like Trojan horse education. We're sneaking it in. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think with like, I feel like I'm hesitant to say that this album's about people from history because I think some people will hear that and be like, snore, turn off. But like, for me, storytelling, like it's in everything we do. You know,
totally.
it's in the news you read. It's in like the gossip that your friends tell you. It's you know, in everything we watch and listen to as well. So stories is, you know, it doesn't. The idea of history doesn't have to be dry, and I think that's kind of the point of this. Is like I have a very short attention span, so it's just like these people are impressive and they're interesting and they've done mad things. And I guess even the most amazing, impressive people have weird, messed up lives and, you know, complicated foibles and stuff. So it's been fascinating and really fun.
Yeah, it's been an absolute blast, and we've had so much fun playing the music from the album on Alt Nation. We're going to get to your session now. Dan, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.